The biblical Promised Land was originally in Africa. The location was later stolen out of Africa by the Greeks and the Romans, and relocated to its current location in the Middle East. Today we bring you the smoking gun evidence, straight from the Bible itself, preserved in the oldest translations, Targum Jonathan, Peshitta, Vedas Latina. We assert the biblical Promised Land was in Africa, deeply embedded in Cush, Nubia, and Ethiopia, and later those names and places were transposed to the Levant. This is not theory. These are direct internal biblical cues, undisguised truths, suppressed until now. The execration texts of Egypt's 12th dynasty cursed rulers of Eanok alongside Cushites, not Levantines. If Eanok is the biblical Anakim, Joshua 11:21, they were a Nubian tribe, not Levantine. Joshua states the Anakim in the hill country, but Egyptian texts reserve Sest, literally highlands, for Nubia, not Judah. Hebron, Genesis 23:2, resembles Egyptian Beren. Dibur, Joshua 10:38, echoes the Nubian Bar Temple inscriptions. Numbers 13:33 calls the Anakim giants, fit for Nubian warriors of the Kerma culture, 2500 to 1500 BCE. Why would Egypt curse Levantine rulers together with Nubians, unless Canaan's core lay in Nubia? This is a smoking gun. Anakim were moved in the text. Ancient Hebron and Dibir in the Levant produce no evidence of giants, whereas Kerma elites were towering. So when someone points archaeologists at Levant Hebron and claims this is biblical Hebron, we say, yes, but a later Levantine duplication of an original African site. When standing in Egypt, the true Negeb, the southern desert, referred to the vast arid region south of the Nile Valley, the Eastern Sahara or Nubian Desert. The tiny Levantine Negev only looks south relative to Canaan, and not to someone standing in Egypt. As evidence, Thutmose III's topographical lists, Karnak c. 1450 BCE, place Enjbi districts alongside Upper Egyptian sites like El Kab and Nubian Iram. Papyrus Wilbur records grain taxation of the Enjbi district in Upper Egypt. Edfu Temple mentions Enjbi as a supplier to Nubian gold routes. Execration texts curse rulers of Enjbi alongside Nubian chiefs. Mining papyri locate gold and copper expeditions to Enjbi districts or Enjbi in the eastern desert. Egyptian directional usage was clear. South equals upstream into Nubia. The Hebrew Bible's Negev descriptions match the Sahara's scale, not the small Levant desert. Genesis 13:1 says Abram went from the Negev to Egypt, only logical if that Negev was Egypt's southern frontier, not Judah's southern desert. Therefore, biblical references to Negev originally meant Egyptian Nubian desert, later relocated to Judah by exilic scribes. Deuteronomy 1:44 in Targum, Jonathan recalls the Amorites chasing Israel from Seir to Hormah, both terms tied to Nubia. Papyrus Harris groups Amorites, Amar, with Cushites as southern enemies. Midian appears as Cushan in Habakkuk 3:7, again African. Cushan equals Midian equals Ethiopian territory. Genesis 10:6 lists Canaan alongside Cush, Mizraim, Egypt, Phut, who are clearly African nations. How natural if Canaan sat within that family geography, near Africa, not distant Levant. So, Amorites, Canaan, Midian, all originally in Africa, are placed in the Levant when exoticizing holy geography. The Bible depicts Israelite customs of pillar building. Jacob erects a stone at Bethel, Genesis 28:18, 12 stones at Gilgal, Joshua 4:20. Absalom's pillar, 2 Samuel 18:18. That tradition matched African culture. Egypt, Nubia, Ethiopia have long histories of obelisk and pillar monuments. By contrast, the Levant has no native pre-medieval pillar tradition. So if pillar building marks Israelites, then Africa, not the Levant, was the true heartland of the biblical people. 2 Kings 19:9 and Isaiah 37:9 report Tirhaka, king of Cush, marching to fight Assyria to save Judah. How rapidly could Cush intervene? Unless Judah lay right next to Cush. Genesis 2:13 says, Gihon wins through the land of Cush. Book of Jubilees allocates land west of the Gon to Cush, east to Shem, Israel. 2 Chronicles 21:16 pairs Philistines and Arabians near the Cushites. Together, Israelites, Philistines, Cushites lived side by side in Africa, Dutch theoretically separated by the Nile. That's the only way Cush could swiftly intervene in Judah's affairs. Descriptions of lush forests, brooks, gold, bdellium, ivory, acacia trees, papyrus construction, all reflect African geography, not arid Levant. Acacia-rich Shittim makes no sense in Moab, but thrives in Sudan Sahel. Joshua's miracle at the city Adam fits Ethiopia's Adama on the Awash River. not a non-existent Levant city atom. The Awash flows into a terminal salt lake like Lake Ab, paralleling the Salt Sea east of biblical Chinnereth. Directionals: Bible says waters flow east, fits Awash, not Jordan River. Crossing of Yam Suf described as a wind-pushed river or marsh, not a vast sea. That fits East African wetlands. Moses had a Cushite Ethiopian wife, Numbers 12 verse 1. His Midian home was Cushite territory. Joseph married Asenath, Egyptian daughter of Potipharah. His children Ephraim and Manasseh born in Egypt, Genesis 46:20. That makes Israel half Egyptian from the start. The Queen of Sheba came from Cush, Genesis 10:7, gave Solomon African gold and spices. Jeremiah 38:7-13 tells of Ebed-Melech the Cushite in Jerusalem's court. Zephaniah 1:1 identifies the prophet's son of Cushi. The Song of Solomon's Shulamite says, "I am black, but comely, the sun hath looked upon me." Amos 9:7 declares, "Are ye not as children of the Cushites to me, O children of Israel?" These internal references embed Israel within African identity. The biblical narrative keeps Africa in the pedigree. Isaiah 19:19-25 prophesies an altar to the Lord in Egypt, calling Egypt my people alongside Israel. Zechariah 14:18 says Egypt must go up to Jerusalem, but in Nile-based geography, up means south. If Egypt must go south, then Jerusalem lay south of Egypt. Genesis 46:3-4 says Jacob goes down to Egypt, and God will bring him up again. That means his homeland lay south of Egypt. Jeremiah 46:7-8 likens Egypt's power to the Nile, suggesting biblical writers oriented up-down along Nile flow. Thus, Jerusalem and the Promised Land lay south of Egypt, in Africa. Nimrod is a son of Cush, Genesis 10:8, yet he builds Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Shinar. Peshitta spells Sennar, evoking Sennar in Sudan. Why? Because the original Babylon, Shinar Babalim, was in Cush, Africa. An ancient plain called Dura exists in Sudan. Jabal Duro near Khartoum. In Daniel 3:1, Nebuchadnezzar sets up his image in the plain of Dura. If our theory places Babylon in Sudan, Jabal Duro fits exactly. Ancient Babylon lay between the two rivers, White Nile, Euphrates, and Blue Nile, Tigris, both running through Sudan. Daniel's interpretation of Mene Mene Tekel matches Zosu meanings, not Akkadian, pointing again to Southern African roots. Genesis 15:18 defines Abraham's boundary, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The river of Egypt is the southern Nile border. So the Promised Land stretches from Nile border into southeastern Africa. Texts such as Ezekiel 29:10 and 30:6 define Egypt's southern border at Sin or Aswan, touching Cush. The land of Ham, Psalm 105:23, Psalm 106:22, Israel came into the land of Ham. Ham's descendants include Egypt and Canaan, grouped together in Africa's sphere. Amos 3:15 mentions houses of ivory, only plausible in elephant-rich Africa. Nominal and legal systems, shekels, ephahs, Sabbath language, parallel African linguistic forms. Tribal scepters used by African peoples replicate Israel's rod tradition, Numbers 17. When religion, academia, and colonial power collaborate, they can uproot a sacred geography and erase a covenant from its cradle. They relocated Eden, Canaan, Jerusalem, not by accident, but design. They recast Africa as cursed land, while claiming God's promise for a distant Levant. They taught Africans they were outsiders, even though the Bible repeatedly links Ham, Cush, Egypt, and names them as covenant bearers. Jeremiah 8:8, "How do ye say, we are wise, and the law of the Lord is with us? Lo, certainly in vain made he it, the pen of the scribes is in vain." This is precisely what happened, a betrayal of Scripture. What we have revealed today are not theories, but internal biblical logics. The smoker gun quotations: Anakim cursed as Nubians, Negev eats Nubian desert, Cush, Canaan, Midian all African, Nimrod's Babel and Sennar, directional cues placing Jerusalem south of Egypt, prophetic unity of Egypt and Israel in worship. These citations demand one conclusion: the original Promised Land was in Africa. If you've accepted the Levant as the biblical heartland, this video shows that framework is built not on scripture, but on centuries of redaction and relocation. History and theology must now reckon with this truth. To leave you with this sobering reality, once you move one sacred cornerstone, you must rebuild maps, identity, theology, pilgrimage, faith. That is what was done to Africa. But truth rises. Scripture, in its oldest forms, Targum Jonathan, Peshitta, Vedas Latina, paint an African geography. This is not small error. It is a spiritual crime, and those who distorted it will be accountable. to history, and to God. Credit goes to the following sources: Targum Jonathan, Dead Sea Scrolls, Vetus Latina, Produce with Integrity, Redeem Africa's Covenant Legacy. So far in this video, we have used deductive reasoning on the Bible text, original internal logic evidence, maintains full sentence length, corrected tense, and bold tone, and delivers the smoking gun quotations clearly and emphatically.